odd to think about it now, but back then, there was extraordinary sensitivity about when and how we were going to talk about that. Were we going to be exploiting 9/11? You know, that was the idea. What we discovered was people wanted to talk about it. And they said, absolutely, are you kidding me?
I want you to think about September 11th. And I want you to think about that feeling that you had, because I'm going to tell you, I can remember watching this happen, and there was this fear, like, you know, what are we going to do?
So the Ashley ad is an ad that I think had a big impact, particularly in Ohio. Suddenly up pops this ad about this little girl whose mother had died at 9/11.
But when President George W. Bush came to Lebanon, Ohio, she went to see him, as she had with her mother 4 years before.
He walked toward me and I said, Mr. President, this young lady lost her mother in the World Trade Center.
And he turned around and he came back and he said, I know that's hard. Are you all right?
Our president took Ashley in his arms and just embraced her.
Man, it just brings tears. I mean, I still see that ad and I kind of tear up, and it's, it was a very soft human message.
He's the most powerful man in the world, and all he wants to do is make sure I'm safe, that I'm okay.
She happened to be from that state, which gave it, I think, particular resonance in Ohio, and also fundamentally reassured a target group of voters, women, who they were trying to persuade to move from where they were in 2000, which was heavily for Gore, to, a more favorable position for Bush.
To me, it just sounds so cheesy to say father figure, I guess. I mean, he's sort of like that to me, sort of the type that I just look at him and go, he just makes me feel safe.
We asked the advertising team to try and come up with some metaphors to talk about the war on terror, to try and tell a story through metaphor, because that can be very, very powerful.
In an increasingly dangerous world, even after the first terrorist attack on America,
The team came back with this idea of the wolves, and it tested off the charts. I mean, it was very, very powerful. In fact, so powerful that we knew that we'd want to use it at the most optimal time, about 10 days out.
And weakness attracts those who are waiting to do America harm.
Karl Rove orchestrated it all so that there was this perception of impending doom and terror, and did nothing to abate that.
Today, the United States government is raising the threat level to code orange.
When the government's telling you we can be attacked anytime, anywhere, and you trust your government, people in Ohio aren't stupid for feeling like they're going to get attacked.
They so effectively scared the daylights out of Americans because they knew George Bush couldn't run on his domestic record. Vote for me. I've lost jobs. I'm the first president in modern history to lose jobs since Herbert Hoover. Vote for me. I've increased our budget deficit. Vote for me. Millions more Americans have no health insurance. Vote for me. I underfunded my own Leave No Child Behind. Of course not. The only thing he could run on was September 11th and terror.
After September 11th, our world changed. Either we fight terrorists abroad or face them here.
We talked about war on terror, and we talked about Kerry flip-flopping, and what we did in a very concerted fashion was to make sure we had a national message and it didn't break down into a million sub-targeted local messages. One of the things that we do as Republicans and Republican presidential campaign is that we recognize how important attributes are to voters. The one attribute that the president has that nobody disagrees with is strength. Even people who disagree with the president will say he's strong, he stands up for what he believes in. So the best thing that can happen is to have a candidate who is the mirror opposite of your attributes. In other words, looking back, Howard Dean is strong and stands up for what he believes in.
We're going to South Carolina and Oklahoma and Arizona.
John Kerry's not. Our strengths were his liabilities. So really Kerry lined up in a lot of ways as a great candidate for us to run against. But when it looked like Howard Dean was going to be the candidate, we came up with the idea of steady leadership in times of change. And against Howard Dean, steady was like steady versus crazy. Even though Howard Dean's campaign became a toboggan to hell, I think he probably would have been a better nominee against us.
You guys behaved so badly, you got to get a new life.
When John Kerry became the nominee, we thought about it and said, well, do we need to change this now? And we realized, no. In fact, now it's steady versus a guy who doesn't know who he is. He was perfect in terms of reflecting liabilities to our strengths. And I think that, Democrats are sort of in this wilderness of trying to find, these micro messages
He's a husband and father, a hunter, hockey player, tough prosecutor, advocate for kids, a man of faith.
So I think what they did is they over-target. You know, they try and have a message for everybody and end up having a message for no one.
My team went out, and at one point, the campaign strategist told me, because I kept saying, you have no message. And I said, yes, we do. It's J-Hose. J-Hose? I follow this relatively closely. I mean, I'm standing in the Kerry headquarters when they tell me this. I'm on TV every day. I said, yeah, I've never heard of J-Hose. Oh, yes, it's jobs, health, oil, and security. And I said, well, those are 4 topics. Those are 4 interesting issues. But that's not a message. And when Bush's message is, I will protect you from those who will murder you, and he won't. And we're saying, J-Hose? Here's my policy position on health care? Forget it.
The Democrats took many very different messages, which they sort of bought the traditional things, they delivered in a broadband way. We did the opposite. We took one message and delivered it in a varied way. So it's no longer we're going to go buy ABC or NBC and CBS and communicate a message to 80% of the public, because the amount of information is so much. The vast majority of the public wants somebody to wade through it and tell them what's real, what's true, what's credible. And so a big part of our campaign was directed at the 10 or 15% of people in this country that are basically the influentials. They're the ones that tell their neighbor what restaurant to go to in a community. They're the ones that say this team is going to be good this year. And they're also the ones that say, I really don't trust John Kerry, or I think George Bush is right on this. That's why we bought certain advertising that other people had never bought before. Golf Channel, the Learning Channel, places that these influentials and opinion makers watch and go for information, because those were the people that would talk to the rest of the country.
From the outset, we said this is going to be a close contest. And we always felt that John Kerry would be a formidable candidate. We respected him as a candidate. I think the Democrats, frankly, made a mistake in not respecting the president as a candidate.